Hi, everyone. This is Eric Molin with Impact Presenting with my first podcast, episode 1. Today, I'll be speaking with Francesco Maione. He's a vice president for Air Products, which specializes in gases and chemicals for various industries, an $8 billion company, and he's a vice president for the northern region of the United States. In addition to being a public speaking skills coach, I also facilitate team building and leadership development exercises. One of those events, the Build-A-Bike, is where teams from a company come together and try to build bicycles as quickly as possible, which are then donated to a local children's charity. It was at this event where I got to know Francesco, who's generously given us a few minutes of his time to talk to us about his journey as a communicator and as a leader. Okay, so good morning, Francesco. Thanks a lot for taking some time to talk with me.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning. And I thought, well, let me give a little bit of background information for our listeners. So I'm Eric Molin. I'm a public speaking coach. I'm based in Europe, but I work pretty much everywhere, mostly in Europe and the US. And I was fortunate. We got to meet each other. I believe it was about 3 years ago in Houston.
It was 3 years ago on an event we held here in Houston. It was about a team building with a team about building a bike and helping the local community.
Exactly. A team building event and bringing together the team and getting them to do some charity work together and not only learn some teamwork, but make an impact on the community. Yes, exactly. And I was at that time. I enjoyed speaking with you because you're coming originally from Spain.
Yes, I'm. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm Italian, and I had just moved from Barcelona to Houston towards the end of 2016 for my work. I work as an executive in a multinational company called Air Products. We are specialized in industrial and medical gases. We are an $8 billion company with around 15,000 employees around the world.
Wow.
In my current role, I am the vice president and general manager for the North region in the U.S. I'm based at the moment in Pennsylvania, in Allentown, where is our headquarters. As I said earlier, I was managing the South region in Houston. And now I just relocated over here with my family. And I've been in a product for 21 years. So a long time for being in the same company, but I really had the opportunity of working in Europe, in Asia, and in the US.
So it sounds like you've got some international experience and
a lot of international experience. Yeah, and also on top of it, as I said, I'm Italian. My wife is French. We have 3 children. So a lot of international or multi-language communication at home with the family. And it makes it very interesting.
Yes, I'll bet. As an American living in Europe, I get to enjoy these moments quite frequently. So, moving from Italy to Spain, okay, that is a change. And then going over to the U.S. and being a vice president, you're really, communication is your main leverage, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's as you said, when I moved first from out of Italy around 25 years ago, I moved to the UK. So the interesting thing is that I actually never worked professionally in Italy or lived as a family in Italy. So I had to adjust quickly to communicate both internally inside the company and externally using a language that is not my first language. First of all, in the late 90s, I had to start to adjust to the different accents in the UK, understanding really the culture, really what people meant, how they meant it, what was their body language. So that was really my first experiences. And I remember at the time, the first communication that I had, basic communication was with local speakers over the phone, was already a challenge to say, okay, am I going to be able to understand? Am I going to be able to process what I want to say? So that was in the early days, I would say, a lot of mentally translating and then trying
Mm,
to communicate. I think over the
mm,
years that evolved very much. And by when I went to Spain, and I lived in Spain for more than 10 years, I learned the importance of understanding, the context of where the people are from. If I'm communicating in Barcelona or in Madrid or in Andalusia, connecting with the local people, understanding really the most effective way to get through to them. So creating empathy, creating
mm,
a relationship where people really connect with you as an individual. And
mhm.
as you do make that connection, you increase your level of trust. And as you know, being an expert in communication, more than 90% is about your body language. It's not about
Mhm.
what you say, it's how you say it and how you connect with the
Mhm.
people. Therefore, I think I got a very in-depth appreciation of the importance of the culture when I was in Spain.
Mhm. Okay, yeah. Well, there definitely there are those challenges, and of course, how you say things. It's been now established by many different experts. It's much more important than the exact words that you use. Although, of course, the exact words that you use, they carry a lot of weight as well, especially when you're in management. And what I'm really curious about, so you've kind of gone through this learning curve about meeting new cultures, building empathy and connections with people. And now, how was it for you when you first started having to speak to groups of people?
Yeah, I mean, it's when I started to do some external public speaking, as well as some communication session, webcast with the local audience. Um, Really, my everybody I think needs to aim or strive to be authentic and real in that communication moments, right? So using a story to illustrate what you're trying to say is very powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having eye connection with the people in the audience, moving. I like to move. I don't like to
Mm-hmm.
stand. Usually, when I am speaking in front of people, but really set yourself before that communication session your goals, what you are trying to achieve, what is the goal of that session, as you will have few minutes to make an impression, right? For me,
Mm-hmm.
that is critical. And I like, I mean, when I am clearly everybody has got specific topics that they like to connect internally and externally, and I like to focus a lot on sustainability initiatives because those initiatives have the opportunity to increase the social responsibility of the company, but also leverage and engage people and based on their pride, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
me, when I talk to people, I like the importance and how helps you that topic to empathize with the team. We mentioned earlier the Build a Bike event. That was something that would people feel what is the company doing for the community. Now,
Mm-hmm.
having a topic like that help you to build that engagement, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
topic itself, it's important if it is sustainable, if it is about sustainability. It is also even more important because that helps you to explain what is the company you're working on beyond
Mm-hmm.
making gases, doing for the community and
Mm-hmm.
sustaining life every day. Other initiative that I did that were very interesting in terms of building that connection that you were asking for. I work with Make a Wish in Spain
Mm-hmm.
to realize special dreams for children that are in hospital with critical disease
Sure.
that want
Mm-hmm.
to build and they want to build their fight back, their spirit to fight back and the morale. Or as well, I work with Curarte, that is another organization that helps to decorate hospital, important hospital, where children are treated like for dialysis on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to make sure that I give example of sustainability, but I like to find topic where you can build that moment of curiosity and
Mm.
engagement with the audience.
Yeah, it's definitely when you're talking to people, there's the information that you want to present, that you want them to absorb, but just doing so won't really do it. But what you're describing, I think, is finding this higher ideal that you have, that your audience member or your listener has. And when you both look at this higher ideal together, then communication takes place. Would you say would you
Yeah,
say that that's about
absolutely.
right?
That's getting in the moment, right? Has to be a combination of using the right visual, making sure that you have a good selection of words, and making sure that, especially for a non-native speaker, that you speak slowly, right? You want to make
Oh
sure
yeah.
you are understood. And you then enter into the cultural piece that is very different making a presentation in Europe than making a presentation in the US, right? You can use the visual, you can use the right words, but you need to make sure that that message sits well with the audience and with the culture
Hmm.
where the audience is coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's something that I can personally relate to, and giving presentations here or giving presentations in the U.S. And I'd like to hear your experiences. I mean, what comes to my mind immediately is that in the U.S., it is about moving quickly. Really, of getting that first initial splash of energy and enthusiasm, and then moving through it and trying to sustain it. Whereas when I'm giving a presentation, let's take Spain as an example. I think that there's much more of an emphasis on who am I, the person standing in front of them, delivering the message, and not really in the way of giving my whole, explaining my resume or giving a long introduction, but rather, the small things of how I make my impact, the eye contact, the way that I use my voice, the way that I stop and perhaps think about things. Have you had something similar? Do
Yeah.
you have some? Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you look at, as you said, the US is more fast-paced. Also, the amount of information people want to see is about the presentation, right? It's less probably sometimes about you. It's about what you are presenting to them, giving them
Mm.
more depth in the detail that you are explaining. Typical of a more low context culture, right? So you want to make sure that there is all the information that people are looking for, right? And the person is important. I think it's important even in the US and the way you say it, but what it's on the slides matters, right? In Europe, they are curious to know you more about you, getting to know you, probably not as much as that relationship building is not as critical as it could be in Asia, right?
Mm.
But in Europe, depending on the country, or for example in Spain, as we were talking, people they want to understand, if you are there to build trust with them, right? They will listen more and they will be more receptive to what you're explaining if they sympathize with your background, where you're coming from, and clearly making the effort of presenting in their own language
Mm.
makes a big impact, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if you make mistakes, right? They see the effort, they see through what you are explaining and the way you are explaining it. So again, and sometimes you have to be more careful in what you're trying to explain. And maybe sometimes you don't want to be too explicit because
Mm.
people could be, more hard from a personal perspective, right? And that is the sensitivity of the culture, importance of the culture. Maybe in the US would be more direct. You can be more direct. People knows exactly what to expect. And especially, I mean, just to give you an example, in our industry, a lot of the people who work in our industry are often from a military background, right?
Hmm.
So sometimes that importance of direct communication it's is very critical, right? Because people, if you are direct, they know where they stand and they go out and
Hmm.
execute, right? But if you are somehow a European and you are, concerned about what you're going to say and you go around the words and you are, you are making it more difficult than
Mm,
ultimately to execute, right? It's all about
right.
execution. Yeah,
People then they look at you and they see you trying to think of the right way to put something, but they don't give you they don't assign a good motive to that. They say, "Oh no, he's thinking too hard. He's being dishonest with us or something like
exactly,
that." They can
exactly.
misinterpret your signals.
Yeah, and I think that is the main thing is that you might not be or might not want to be dishonest, but because of your
Hmm.
appreciation of sensitivity to the
Hmm.
fact that you are explaining, you are giving maybe some tough messages, it it can be misunderstood, right? So if you're in a leadership role, you want to make sure that you build the right engagement and motivation, and you are driving a set of goals. You have to make sure that you are very prescriptive in what you're asking them to do. Yeah, very
Okay, so to
clear.
have a very clear call to action and
Exactly. I mean,
be explicit about it.
and it's a different way. But sometimes I found that the good mix, if you are understanding, if you're able to understand the context and the culture that you're working on, in this case is the US, and you bring in empathy to connect with people, you actually achieve an even bigger results by
Hmm.
combining direct instructions or direct communication with powerful personality or powerful empathy. And probably see it often that in the US you can find very powerful or let's say visible Italian that sometimes are appreciated about their culture, appreciated about their life vision, but still very successful in the US, right? So
Hmm.
the combination of the two things, I think, it can be very powerful.
Okay. Okay. So let's imagine then, I think if you had to give one piece of advice for Europeans coming over to the US, is that, hold on to your personality, but also, be direct, figure out what it is that you need. And as uncomfortable as it may be the first few times, get it out there.
I would say, yeah, I think you need to, as the piece of advice is, be direct in what you're trying to achieve. So be clear in your messages. Use your personality as a way to enable your message to be even more powerful, right? So make sure that you stick to the fact that you want to be authentic, you want to be real, you want to make sure that you have a story to tell to
Mm.
explain the messaging, but also be very clear with what is the message you are trying to give them, right? So direct message, but use your personality to make that message real.
And I think something American audiences, we are very curious. And when we hear somebody coming on stage for the first, and we notice, that they're not from the US, I think that we perk up a little bit and, that we're curious. We're like, hey, where is this person from? So to rather not be self-conscious about the things that make you different, but rather to use them to your advantage.
Yeah, and as I said, as I live in a situation where I have a lot of multicultural interaction with my friends at home back in Italy or in Spain, with my family. I always try to tell stories that are, telling more about myself, about what I
Mm.
like, about my personality. So trying to connect, if it is a public speaking, or if it is with my team, it is important to create that connection because if you create that connection, well, number one, you can communicate more effectively. And if you're
Mm.
managing a team internally, you are achieving better result by combining that clear messages with a personality that wants to build empathy and trust. Yeah.
Yep, yep. And stories, again, they are really the international medium for expressing ourselves. And I think there's a lot of hesitation in Europe about getting into storytelling and getting people to open up and say things that may not immediately be related to the subject. But once they start to do it, I mean, it really, as you just have highlighted, it is a very powerful tool for connecting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, this brings us, I know you have limited time. You're a super busy guy. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and add some value also for the people that may not ever come to our class or may never meet you, but they can share some of our wisdom and bring it into their communication styles.
Eric, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you and to your student and to tell about a little bit about my story and my style. Thank you.
Thank you.